We got a series of United States Supreme Court rulings in the last 45 days, one in particular that is proving to be the undoing of the Trump administration and its legal position in court to try to justify the summary removal of people without due process, which is being slammed as unconstitutional and illegal in every federal court that has looked at it, including triple rulings just last week in Texas, Colorado, and New York, all against the Trump administration. And it's because he miscalculated. And he told his supporters, or his supporters told him, and those around Donald Trump, you won the JGG decision 6-3 by the Supreme Court. You won 9-0, although it was against you at the Supreme Court in the ruling about Abrego Garcia. You won 7-2, even though it was a loss against you related to the deportation of other people sitting in Texas back to that dank gulag. And the reality is he lost all three of those major decisions. I'm going to tell you why the JGG decision is so important. And it's the ticking time bomb in plain sight that is currently blowing up in the face of the Trump administration. And talk about in the last 72 hours alone, three different judges, including two Trumpers, ruling against Donald Trump and the administration. Welcome to Legal AF and the new YouTube channel. Take a moment and hit that subscribe button. Let me pull all this together. And Just Security, which I follow pretty religiously, did a great job at summarizing it. I've been jotting down my notes of all the losses. But how did we get to the series of losses? Judge Rodriguez, Judge Sweeney, Judge Hellerstein, boom, 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 all 48 hours apart, 72 hours apart. How did that happen? How did all of them come to the same conclusion in Colorado, in New York, in Texas? That Donald Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act is phony. It's wag the dog. It's completely without constitutional basis and is illegal because we're not suffering. Look around you. Take a moment, open your window, look outside. Do you see a predatory incursion by armed combatants for Venezuela? So anywhere? And write in the notes and in the comments if you can see it. But without that, all we have is simple migration of people who emigrated to this country, some of which may have had ill intent and bad hearts. And if they're criminals, they should be removed, of course, just with due process. And so since there's no enemy incursion, there's no predatory incursion, there's no coordination with the Venezuelan government. We know that from new unclassified memos that the Trump administration issued. We know it from them. That there's no coordination between the criminal gang Tren de Aragua at the heart of the Alien Enemies Act and the Venezuelan government. Don't take my word for it. Go to Legal AF Substack. We got the memo sitting right there, declassified, from Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump's own security director, intelligence director. So now Donald Trump gets all excited. And we talked about it on Legal AF, the podcast. He said, I won 6-3. They took it away from Boasberg, and Boasberg was just about to find me in contempt. And his order that I ground the planes to go to El Salvador. And the Supreme Court said I could use the Alien Enemies Act. Hooray! You can hear it over the pops of champagne corks. Except when we read the order, there was a problem for Trump's analysis. It wasn't true. What it said was, Boasberg was right and he was wrong. He was right in the sense that he, about the observations about the substance, but it was the wrong court. They didn't like that the case was in DC. They said the Supreme Court 6-3 said it should be in the individual jurisdictions where these people last were or are currently for processing. So that's Texas, Colorado, and New York. Let the judges there do it. Not no judges, just let the judges there. And they didn't say the Alien Enemies Act they didn't approve it for use by Donald Trump, the Supreme Court. They said, let the individual judges handling the habeas corpus petitions determine the constitutionality or the statutory legality of Donald Trump using the Alien Enemies Act. That's it, plain and simple. And what they didn't do, though, and Trump misinterpreted, is they didn't block his continued use of the Alien Enemies Act while these judges were making their rulings. But then they effectively did, because in a later ruling, 7-2, they ruled that Donald Trump could not deport people any longer to a foreign jail without due process while they consider the matter. So those two decisions, 6-3 and 7-2, when you read them together, Donald Trump's a loser. And then you add the third decision, 9-0, all in the last 45 days, in which they supported 9-0, including the Trumpers. Judge Zinnes and how she's administering justice in her courtroom about Abrego Garcia forcing his return. You take all that together, the only way you can synthesize that is a losing hand for Donald Trump, that he's lost and lost big time, but not to Donald Trump. And so now what's happening? Well, the world envisioned by the Supreme Court in the JGG case of individual or at least class action centered around a certain district in the federal courts, like the Southern District of Texas, the Northern District of Texas, the Southern District of New York, Colorado. Some states only have one federal district. The world that the Supreme Court set us out on, created, the synthetic world, is that individual judges will handle these things on habeas, review the Alien Enemies Act, make a decision, and it'll come up back through appeal to the Supreme Court. Now, Donald Trump doesn't want any judges reviewing anything related to his exercise of any kind of power under the Alien Enemies Act. And every judge that's looked at that, including the Supreme Court, has rejected his position that he can be a lawless president without checks and balance. So judges decide. That was missed, apparently, by Donald Trump and how much he liked and embraced the JGG decision. But now the chickens are coming home to roost because now individual judges. And let's just give you, starting back in March, right up until a couple of days ago, here's the actual, how we got here. Started back in March. And I did reporting about this in a decision, 2-1, supporting Judge Boasberg. And one of the judges there was actually Judge Henderson on the circuit court, the appellate court for DC, who's a Republican, a Reagan and Bush appointee. She was a Reagan appointee for trial court level and Bush appointee for the appellate court. And she said the following. She said, when you're talking, in order to use the Alien Enemies Act, there has to be a predatory invasion akin to war. And that's what she said. She said, the government claims that invasion is any arrival of things that you don't want. Like somebody shows up, like your in-laws or your mother-in-law, whatever, and I love my mother-in-law, shows up unannounced at the house for dinner. That could be, in Donald Trump's view, that could be a predatory invasion because it's the arrival of people who are not wanted there. or your nosy neighbor who shows up because he wants to see what the inside of your house looks like. I can't use the Alien Enemies Act, can I? She goes on to say the theme that rings true is that an invasion is a military affair, not normal migration. That was picked up later on. Then Stephanie Gallagher, a Trump judge in April, end of April, she said, you haven't even shown how any of the members of the class have posed a threat to public safety under the Alien Enemies Act. So now the wheels are starting to fall off. You got Bush appointee, Trump appointee, fast forward to another Trump appointee in this order. So see where we're going? Fernando Rodriguez, a judge in the Southern District of Texas. He rules on May 1st that he's the first one to issue a permanent injunction on this finding, first federal judge, that Donald Trump cannot use the Alien Enemies Act, that there's not an enemy invasion or incursion. That's not how the term is being used, and it was unlawful and unconstitutional. Fast forward to the 6th of May when we get two rulings, one in New York and one in Colorado. Judge Hellerstein, senior judge in New York, a Clinton appointee, he says there's no war, invasion, or predatory incursion, and therefore there's nothing other than migration, and therefore you cannot use the Alien Enemies Act to oust these people. He said, this is what Hellerstein said, they do not seek to occupy territory, to oust American jurisdiction from any territory, or to ravage territory. The Tren de Aragua narcotics gang from Venezuela may well be engaged in narcotics trafficking, but that is a criminal matter, not an invasion or predatory incursion. And the same thing, same day, Judge Sweeney, a Biden appointee, so it runs the gamut here, she rules in her preliminary injunction the same thing. She said respondents' arguments, Trump administration, are threadbare costumes for their core contention. As for whether the act's preconditions are satisfied, that their condition is that the president makes the call and federal courts don't have a role to play. She said this sentence staggers the mind. It is wrong as a matter of law and attempts to read out an entire provision of the Constitution. And so she declares, again, another judge. So you've got three federal judges all within a few days of each other declaring the Alien Enemies Act based on the JGG Supreme Court case I just outlined to be illegal. And now it's going to go up to their respective courts of appeal and then over to the United States Supreme Court. But if you're trying to read the tea leaves, Donald Trump might be winning some other things at the Supreme Court, but he's not winning on ignoring due process, summarily removing people without notice, sending them to foreign jails, and using the Alien Enemies Act to do it. That is a losing hand, losing. But Donald Trump keeps playing that hand and chasing a bad bet like the gambler that he is. I'm going to continue to follow it all right here. You're here on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the subscribe button, come over to our Substack. You'll get even more information there, including a morning briefing from me, and then all the other contributors that we have here on Legal AF. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.